Hey, great evening to y'all. Well, you guys are going to get quite the surprise tonight because this afternoon I had a talk with my boss. And I was clearly told that people seeing me right now, with the knowledge that I have and the learning that I am pumping out, people don't quite understand how it all started for me. And that in order for people to really understand the possibility of change, you all need to fully understand the depth of how it all started. So, what I'm going to do is I am just going to read the preface, and I am going to read up until my soul tells me to stop. So, if you've decided to join, I welcome you wholeheartedly. If you're watching the replay, I welcome you wholeheartedly. But after this, you're going to clearly understand how it all initially started for me. Okay? And I'm going to read the preface. So, in doing so, I'm going to let you guys all know right now that I will not be checking the comments until after. I will not be checking who's out there. I will not be seeing any of it. I'm about to take a deep dive into my book and share it with you guys, whoever's interested. All right? So, this is Turning Hell into Heaven, an inspiring personal journey as an empath and light worker by Tobi Staples. It's copyright 2021. All rights reserved. This copy, though, of this book is my final edition of this. So this book was the last edition of this first book in 2021. But the first edition of this book was copywritten, I believe, 2019, I believe. Or maybe 2020. So, well, I can be factual with it if I look it up. But this one, this copy of the smaller A5 version, because I couldn't figure out how to publish them this small before. So that's why there were other ones bigger than this. And they're in actually magazine form. Easier to read, whatever, you can write notes in anyway. So, so Turning Hell into Heaven, an inspiring personal journey as an empath and light worker by Tobi Staples, copywritten 2021. I'm not going to go through the description or the dedications. I'm going to hop right into the preface. So, I should start by saying that in no way is any of what you're about to read fictional. It is my life, and all events are true. My experiences will help you realize that your situation really is not that bad when you begin to see it from a different perspective, no matter what you're living. How am I going to do this? Well, very simply. I'm going to take you on a journey through my own personal hell and how I overcame it all. It's as easy as that. My hell will make you understand that you have it pretty easy compared to many others. On the other hand, I will share some of the necessary tools that were effective for me in truly embracing my power and becoming the now empowered empath and light worker that I am. My recent turning point, which was reconnecting with my soul, gave me a profound understanding as to why I truly had to live all that I have. So that I can so that I could, in turn, help all those who really needed it. Being a person who through life could truly understand and feel somebody else's suffering, as I am an empath. I understand now that hell and heaven are earthly states, and they are not our afterlife. They're the states that we create. With this new level of consciousness that I have reached, I have come to understand that we have the ability within our highly sophisticated beings to create a state of heaven here on earth for ourselves, no matter how hard our human experience has been. I'm living proof of it. Through this book, I will explain about my living hell here on earth, but not through a life story. I've chosen specific life events that were very pivotal in my life. You will understand the intensity of it, and then I will explain my journey to creating heaven on earth for myself. Sharing many tools and daily tips to help you create a pleasant place within yourself, no matter what you have endured on your journey of life. We all need a little bit of guidance at times when we feel like we're drowning in our past traumas, losses, fears, and the guilt or shame of it all. There's nothing better than a positive life experience to guide and give us a little bit of muchly needed light within so much darkness. My experiences have been profound to a point that I understand the importance of sharing it, solely with the intentions of helping those who have been living in hell, as I did, not realizing that there are simple ways to create heaven from that hell. I have no regrets about my life at all, having come to the point of understanding that it has all been for my learning of life. Once programmed and conditioned growing up, now as an adult, I had to unlearn a lot in order to learn how to create my own heaven here on earth. So, understand this from now. I do not feel sorry for myself or anybody for that matter. What we create our life to be is our choice. I truly now believe that emotions are man-made. Yes, I said it. Emotions are man-made. I'm no longer capable of feeling sorry for myself. That is not what this is about. The point that I'm trying to make is that if I can change my hell into heaven, so can you. I'll be very direct in what I'm about to say, so you may want to brace yourself as I walk you through my hell. But the other end is equally intense. My heaven can't be removed from my new state of being, as it is something that I have created for myself, by myself. It is not something external. This state of heaven comes from within me. I am grateful for you to have taken the time to allow yourself to begin your adventure of self-discovery and self-love, as it is as essential and as it... Hold on, mouth's starting to get dry. It is as essential and as important as the water that we drink. I know this because you're reading my book. You owe it to yourself to change your hell into heaven. The journey at the beginning will take you through many memorable awakening points of self-discovery, but go with the flow. Be gentle to yourself through it. The truth may not always be pretty, but it surely does give you a better understanding of yourself. I finally learned that nobody was coming to rescue me. Actually, no. I finally learned that nobody was coming to my rescue, and that I had better begin to do some soul searching. In doing so, I saved my life, literally. You can read about that in the middle of the book. This is not a book about saving me or attempting to save you. Seriously, understand that now. This is a very personal book for me, as it contains my story. This book was written by me, expressing the hardest moments of my personal journey of saving myself, which will be a useful survival guide for many. Enjoy my journey of self-realization, because I certainly have. Enjoy. With loads of love, let this journey begin. Chapter 1, Hell on Earth. Fourth child, born into a family of total dysfunction, is how it all began for me. Love my family, yes, but it can't be denied that my family is damaged. Honestly, whose isn't? This is why I was incarnated as a light worker to begin with, which I'll explain to you later. The damage within my family heritage stems back way before my parents were even born. So no, it's not about putting the blame on my parents or family. It is about acknowledging the ancestral damage that I was physically born into. Both of my parents had lived their own traumas within their own families before coming together and then living a whole new set of traumas. I'm just very real with it. When really analyzing my existence from the very beginning, I can totally accept that I was conceived in hellish conditions, grew within my mother's womb while she endured hell, and then myself born into a living hell, followed by 3 siblings who had already been traumatized by their own personal living hell. I'd been wired for hell and its conditions from the start, which really explains to me the magnitude of what I have personally been able to overcome in my life. Let me give you some insight to some of the trauma that I survived. Alcoholism, physical, emotional, verbal abuse, all played a part of the existent environment that I was incarnated into. Being the 4th child, I never fully felt connected to my parents. My mother already had 3 children before me, with a household to maintain, an abusive alcoholic husband. She truly did not have all the time in the world for me, which is understandable. My father was a hard worker who himself had a very traumatic life and did not know how to give love, much less receive love. He was the type of man who seemed to be a hero to all his drinking buddies, but was a monster to his own children. He did not know how to be a father. His idea of quality time with his children was terrifying and bullying them. The only good thing was that he did teach us all how to work hard. That may be the only good thing that I ever received from my father. Aside from the hell that I was born into, my own internal hell started to bloom when at the age of 4 years old, my innocence was shattered by somebody who was entrusted to protect me. Life was never the same after my babysitter molested me. Obviously, at the time, it sent me into an inward confusion attached to guilt and shame. My life began to change forever. Boy, did it ever. Let it be known that this is in fact the first time that I speak of this particular changing point. For me, this was a very pivotal moment which progressed to a downward spiral throughout the rest of my life. This molestation happened a couple of times before, luckily, a family move saved me from enduring it any longer. I'm sure that it's because of all of the violence and abuse within my household at the time, and seeing how my mother had been suffering through it all made me want to protect her from enduring any more pain. I did this by keeping it to myself. Well, she found out about it now, as I've openly written it in my book. I never have been able to express this until now. It's through experiencing a lack of self-acceptance and love that I sought out connections in life that I couldn't find within my own biological family, which led me down a path of self-destruction, creating a living hell for myself in the long run. Let me explain. My mother always loved me, yes, but I have always been too much for her, meaning the fact that I'm the fourth child and her tolerance and patience by that time she had me had been running low for some time. All my life, from very little, I have always been told to lower my voice, to calm down, to go find something to do, to go play because of the amount of energy that my soul contains. This is the same energy that helped me excel through school. Always feeling like you're too much for people makes you question a lot about yourself. It's like I acquired a complex from an early age within my family structure. The only praise that I was given was for my achievements, so I tried to achieve. Feeling you are too much for your own mother all your life certainly gives you all kinds of mixed emotions. With such a lack of connection to the one that you were supposed to feel the most connected to, I love my mother with all my heart. I know she did the best that she could. It is in watching the warrior soul contained within my mother that inspired me to find my own strength. Without her, I would have never been able to overcome anything in life. That's all that matters to me. It just shows me I have been so hardwired from birth, having no choice but to figure things out eventually for myself, which I have. I always longed for a connection with my father, so much so that in his last years I did everything in my power to make his days better. Even that was difficult, because it was the first time in my whole life that I truly felt connected to him. Okay. All right. I was always seeking his love and just couldn't understand why he couldn't just love me. Okay. Not realizing fully that he did all along. Oh, fuck. That line's not in the book. I'm just trying to catch myself. Whoa, okay. I always felt like there was something wrong with me. Now truly understanding it, all for what it is. He himself didn't know how to love himself. Never mind me. I hold no grudges towards him. Of all the 4 children born unto my father and mother, I am the one most like my father. I can accept that now. I understand that as an adult, one of my biggest obstacles is that I don't know how to receive love. Fuck. I can give loads of it, but truly have a hard time receiving it. And this is something that I am actively working on within myself. Reaching the age of school. Okay, hold on. Take a pause, Tobi. Just catch yourself. All right, don't ride on that wave. Woo, let it go. Sorry, guys. Got to just center myself before I continue. Because, whoa, I'm not riding on that wave. All right. Reaching the age of school, I absolutely loved it. I felt special. I felt accepted. Excellent. Ooh. Reaching the age of school, I absolutely loved it. I felt special, accepted, and I thrived in elementary school. Only because that is where I could shine, and I did. Honor roll for several years. All school sports and activities. I loved being at school. My childhood friends became my family. Until once again my life took a turn for the worst. And not by my decisions, but due to circumstance. My worst nightmare happened when I was exposed by my father to a life-altering situation that once revealed to my mother triggered the divorce of my parents. Even though my mother had previously filed for divorce, she had never followed through with it. I brought the damaging news that my father had exposed me to his adultery to her, explaining to her that he had brought me to his girlfriend's while still living with my mother and us children at the time. Many children live with the thought that they are to blame, that they may have had something to do with their parents' divorce. My exposure to this traumatic event led to the finalization of the marriage between my parents. Already living hell, this is just another thing to add to my trauma as a young child. I finalized my parents' divorce. Not only did my father expose me to such a situation, he also attempted to buy my silence, stopping at the store on the way home to buy me anything that I wanted, as long as I kept that day a secret. If I did so, I could go back to see the beautiful horse that I had fallen in love with right before witnessing my dad, kissing another woman who later turned out to be my first stepmother. It no longer haunts me. After upheaval, my mother relocated us from the country to the city, which shifted my total existence. We all know how different the lifestyles are between the two. Coming to the city as a preteen who was completely lost within her own world was one of the biggest life-altering moments for me. In the country, I had been limited to what I had access to. Moving to the city, well, that changed drastically. My mother, being totally consumed by survival mode within herself, couldn't have changed the course of events that played out for me over the next couple of teenage years. I excelled in elementary school in the country because I was accepted. Coming to the city, I had started puberty. I couldn't identify with anything happening to me, except for the fact that I would draw attention from the boys, which I thought was cool because I just wanted to be loved. I just didn't fit into school in the city. The one thing I knew to be the comfort of my previous world. I was picked on because of the clothes that I wore, having no other choice. I was bullied because I was the new kid. I went to a high school that had many students that came from families that were comfortable. My mother was struggling through relocating and a recent divorce. That didn't help the dynamics of my situation either. The smart kids were often those kids. Many times it didn't matter how intelligent I was or what I had to offer because I didn't come from family wealth. That's what mattered at the end of the day. This was the fact of the city mentality. I just couldn't adjust. I was a tomboy, so I got teased regularly. This fueled aggression within me. I began to lash out on the world. The one place where I was, actually, it's a fresh page. My page. The one place I was able to achieve even minimal happiness was now gone. I became very angry. I found myself being asked to leave many high schools. I just couldn't adjust, which led to acting out, feeling lost, confused, damaged, unlovable, and aggressive. I became a bully to not only myself, but to others as well. I began living a very self-destructive path, experimenting with crime, drugs, and sex. Soon after, I was officially a high school dropout, carrying all of the shame and guilt of feeling no connection to anything earthly by this point in my life. I tried so hard to find love and acceptance from people that I loved, but couldn't. I ended up finding all the love and acceptance that I thought I needed from toxic people. Growing up in a very toxic environment, I found comfort and reliance in being totally wasted. I'm sorry, I'm live online. I cannot answer my door. Come back later. Okay, so let me get back to where I was. Okay, big head, can it? Thank you. All right. So, carrying all the shame and guilt of feeling no connection to anything earthly by this point in my life. I tried so hard to find love and acceptance from people that I loved, but couldn't. I ended up finding all the love and acceptance that I thought I needed from toxic people. Growing up in a very toxic environment, I found comfort and reliance in being totally wasted, constantly settling for the approval of people who I can now see didn't even know how to love themselves, never mind being able to love me. I found myself beginning a path that I led for many years of painful addictions that I used to escape the harshness of my personal reality, only to send me down another self-induced gauntlet. By this point, everybody who had an opinion towards me was convinced that I had the problem. That is how the entirety of my family viewed me. I am sure this would not have been the case if they truly had understood the intensity of my childhood trauma, which started it all. The only real problem that I had was that my soul was so buried beneath all of the trauma that came with being who I am. I was incapable of recognizing this. At the time, though, my life would have become so much easier for me. It just wasn't meant for me at that time to realize this, because I am absolutely sure that it would have stunted my spiritual growth. Once a high school dropout, I did all kinds of things to be accepted by my peers. To give you an idea without going into much detail, let me just say that I was pregnant by the age of 14 and well known to the juvenile detention system right up until the age of 18. So much so that my final probation order for a prostitution charge carried over until I was actually 19. Speaking of that, leads to another pivotal moment of my life. At the age of 17, I met what I thought, at the time, the love of my life. Factually, I met him visiting a friend from detention center who had recently been released. She'd acquired her own apartment. I met this man in the hallway of my friend's building. After partying with him, I decided to follow him to a hotel for the next 3 days, where we indulged in lots of drugs and sex. I thought, in this delusional state, that I had fallen in love with this man who was 19. He himself came from a toxic life, a broken home, and had 2 children already from a previous relationship. At the time, not realizing the impact that this would have on my life, I decided to pack a bag and run off to a totally different province with him, where I was completely willing to do whatever it took to live up to the Bonnie and Clyde reputation that we had created as a couple. This lifestyle brought on everything that is to be expected. The huge blessing that did come out of it was one of my 2 greatest gifts of life. That was my warrior daughter, who chose me as her mother. I'd been pregnant a couple of times during my life, first at 14, resulting in an emergency surgery with the removal of a piece of fallopian tube due to an eruption of an ectopic pregnancy, which nearly took my life. The following pregnancy was at the age of 16. I was pregnant with the father being a pimp, who I thought I was in love with. Obviously, if I was 16 and this man was 28, it wasn't love at all. Being so damaged, I didn't know better at the time. That pregnancy ended by force being in juvenile detention. It was decided by detention workers and my mother. Not being of an age that I could make those decisions, I had to end the pregnancy. That was something I didn't want to do at the time. I do understand now and accept that that was the best thing for me, but then I couldn't. When I got pregnant with my daughter, I was 18. I had run off with her father, believing that I was in love, not realizing that it was very toxic love. When my daughter was born, I had already become a teenage stepmom to her half-siblings. These 2 young children made it easy for me to accept being a mother for the first time. Early on in my pregnancy, Her father went to jail, leaving me to prepare for my first child alone. Thank God my mother is who she is, helping me the way she did. I was maintaining an apartment, trying to figure out life. I was maintaining an apartment, trying to figure life out, as broken as I already was. Needless to say that my daughter saved my life. All of that is just what comes with choosing to live a toxic lifestyle. I knew from that moment that I gave birth to her that she had saved my life. I did the best thing that I could at the time. My daughter then began living a cycle of existence that I had not broken. Myself being unhealed from my trauma. Unknowingly, I dragged my daughter through years of more struggle on my hip as I tried hard to change, feeling inadequate and not enough. I found myself doing drugs to escape from the lifestyle that I once wanted, not realizing how I was affecting another one's life, never mind it being my own daughter. The ripple effect of disaster had been huge in my life, and now I had been creating the same cycle of destruction for my child. I had to change it. I went back to school. Actually, I went back, finished my high school, and got my diploma. Then continued working at and successfully obtained 2 accounting diplomas. Left the toxic love relationship that I had been entangled in for 8 years. Packed up my child and ventured out to start a new life. So I packed up my child and ventured out to start a new life for myself. Not having things figured out as much as I thought that I did. I began to self-sabotage. Every time that things would start getting better in my life, I didn't feel comfortable. Sounds weird, but when all you know is hell, that is where your comfort zone is. When things start to get better for you, it's so foreign that you don't feel worthy of anything good in your life. You knowingly or unknowingly self-sabotage because you are out of your own comfort zone. Well, I became my worst enemy. I became the prisoner within my own mind. The accumulation of the trauma was heavy. The intensity of my self-sabotage was huge. I was drowning, and I had no life preserver. After years of not having the necessary coping skills, constructive outlets, or understanding for that matter that I was incapable of handling life, to a point which led me to move back to my mother's, with at the time an almost 7-year-old child. My life had fallen apart, never being able to cope properly or find meaningful connections that could guide me. I again searched outwardly for love, affection, and intimacy to feel alive. This is what led me to being pregnant with my second child at 26. Not being involved in a committed relationship with the father, my son changed my life again, spiritually forever. He's been my second greatest gift of my life, and so huge in my spiritual growth and in my teaching. Let me explain the added trauma which brought my life so much meaning. Early in my pregnancy with my son. Okay, you know what? I gotta grab some Kleenex. I'll be right back. Oh, yeah. 2 of them. I'll just go for 1, go for 2. Kleenex and a bottle of water. Sorry for the pause, guys, but I'm going to jump right back on it. And like I mentioned at the beginning of it all, I'm not watching who's on or the comments. I'll check it out later because I don't want to be distracted from the read. So even in this pause, I'm not even going to check who's out there. All right. You know what? Yeah, that's right. All right. Hey, Biggie Boo, you're coming to wash my energy? Good girl. Thank you. Ah, good girl. Thank you, thank you. All right. Let me get back to the read, though. Let me explain the added trauma which brought my life so much meaning. Early in my pregnancy with my son, my great-grandmother, who had passed away many years prior, had come to me in a dream. Before this dream, I was so unsure of what my life held in store for me or for the baby that I was carrying. She explained to me clearly as daylight in this dream that it was very important, no matter what challenges that I may face, during this pregnancy, that it was of the greatest importance to allow this soul into the world and into my life. She explained to me that I would endure a very difficult pregnancy, which would lead to very problematic health issues for this baby. No matter what I was told by doctors, I couldn't lose my faith because no matter what, he would be okay. After having this dream, there was no doubt in my mind I was having my son. Being told within the same dream that he would be a boy. There was never any question about whether I was going to keep the baby or not. I did question my capabilities of raising 2 children on my own, not having yet figured out how to start figuring out my own life. I felt inadequate already as a mother. My 2 children became my greatest teachers and blessings in my life. They not only taught me about myself, but they also taught me about life. Living already a hard life, the birth of both of my children were excruciating. Both deliveries being induced with great difficulties and complications at birth. My children were born. My daughter being born with many allergies and sensitivities made being a new mother very difficult for me. That only prepared me for what was to come with my son. Now, my son was stuck in the birthing canal, so he was forced through. It was too late for a C-section. So he endured so much physical trauma at birth that he died during labor. Once born, he was placed on the warmer and pronounced dead without any attempt to revive him. It was the connection that was already in place between me and his warrior soul and his purpose and true essence that saved him. Yelling his name twice and telling him to just breathe, he took life on his own. With all the damage he suffered at birth, it was said that he must have been brain damage, that he would never walk, talk, thrive, or thrive at having a normal life. With all the love humanly possible, this young man who has lived his life, fighting to stay alive with countless food allergies and endless sensitivities, is living with Asperger's, excelling in all areas of life. Through all his fights, it has shown me how to be a better person in all aspects. My experience with my son has taught me how to be grateful for everything. Even after living such an intensely damaging life, he's the reason why I chose to study nursing, in the attempts to make his life a little easier. He has taught me so much about life and continually does so. Well, even though you may think that that is enough for a lifetime, it doesn't end there. Through all of my struggles in life, there has only been one constant through it all. I didn't have the necessary coping skills. I continuously turn to the one thing that I can depend on to soothe my ongoing confusion and pain. And that was drugs. During the chaos of hardship and suffering, in many forms, well, that seemed to be my only comfort. It's crazy when self-sabotage becomes your most craved comfort. It's not healthy for anybody. Throughout my life, I didn't do drugs while being pregnant. I think about it seriously. I question if during my pregnancies was actually the only time that I wasn't consuming toxic amounts of any substance in order to alter my states to cope. Overwhelmed, not being in a fully conscious state of being, I quickly wrecked all that I had attempted to create for myself and my children. Being educated really wasn't to my advantage. Knowledge just gave me an upper hand for manipulating weaker individuals in an attempt to make myself feel better. There are many things, such as many times I had been raped throughout my teenage years also, that was still haunting me. Unhealed with the many other life traumas that I was still carrying. I just couldn't accept what my life had been, or what it had consisted of, for that matter. I found that within my own darkness was the one place that I had become the most comfortable. Wasn't healthy for me or anybody close to me. We don't realize the ripple effect that we cause until it's too late. Once the damage is done, not only to ourselves, but everybody attached to us suffers. During these times, we think that we are only hurting ourselves, but we aren't. Life forced me to leave my children with my mother in an attempt to fix my life, not realizing that it was all a part of what was to come in my future. I had decided to take the opportunity to finally create a better life for myself, returning to school. Deciding at 30 to finally go to college. Returning to adult ed, I studied to successfully complete the requirements for acceptance into the nursing program of my choice. joining this 3-year program, being a single mother, and a very active member within my own community, my life took the biggest turn of all. Just at that moment, that I thought I had started figuring life out to make it work for me and not against me for the first time in my adult life. My experience studying nursing opened my eyes to so much suffering, not realizing at the time that I was an empath, which I'll explain later. Made me feel so many uncomfortable emotions that were not only my own. People would tell me that I was an earthly angel for the care that I was giving them. That all I could think was, if this person only knew my whole story. This whole experience was supposed to better my life. It certainly changed my life, that's for sure. I was not only learning about the human body and how to care for people, I was also learning more about myself as a person than anything. This realization once again sent me into the onset of another drug-induced section of my life. Once I completed my 4th semester of a 6-semester program, my once dream of becoming a nurse was over. On the last day of my semester, well knowing that it was a study day, I chose to go to work for the day. Sorry guys, I need a sip. All right. On the last day of my semester, well knowing that it was a study day, I chose to go to work for the day. In a vineyard, cutting grapes, instead of going to school. At the time, I had moved back to the country to get away from city life, get my life on track, focusing on school. I was traveling by car, on average, 5 hours a day to and from the city for school. My mother agreed that the best place for my children at the time would be with her. While I completed my school and got my life together so I could be the mother they needed. To this day, I am so grateful that my mother has been there throughout their lives, especially during all of the hardest times. On this May Day in 2010, I ventured out to go to work, and life changed forever. I had a car accident that left me never the same again. Driving down that country road in May honestly changed my life forever. The night before, I couldn't sleep, feeling as if I couldn't get settled in my own skin. The morning of the accident, I had a hard time waking up. I had woken up to my friend arriving for work to pick me up. Knowing that we were going to be late, I jumped to my feet and hurried out the door not to make us late for work. I ran to the car, where at the time my roommate's dog didn't want to let me leave the house. She had never done this before, but she stood by the car door, barking and not letting me get into the car. The plan was that I wasn't going to drive that morning. Once realizing we were going to be late, there was nothing going to stop me from driving. I pulled out of the yard after successfully getting into the car and leaving the house. Shortly along my drive, I felt this feeling come over me. I felt something tell me that if I didn't that if I chose not to stop at the local gas station and grab a coffee before heading to work, that I was about to die. I didn't take it seriously at first, until I got this impending sense of doom that came over me, flooding every particle of my being. I just knew at that moment that I was being warned about my nearing encounter with death, which I was oblivious to. Being in a state of feeling really nauseous. My soul's shaking as I relive this and reading it. I stopped to grab a coffee along the route to work. Less than 5 minutes later, halfway into my coffee, I met face to face with an accident that up until today, I know my guardian angel saved my life. After surviving all that I had up until that point in my life, I never expected what was to come. Driving down this dirt road with nothing but ditches and trees on either side of me, not knowing this particular road by heart, I had not yet mastered all of its curves. The car that I was driving was now an all-wheel drive, which I was not used to. It handled a lot differently to what I had been used to. I had just put that car on the road. The roads were still moist from the morning dew, and the fact that I was rushing didn't help the matter. Going around a bend, my car fishtailed. Boy, did it ever. Putting me heading into the direction of a wooded area. If I had impacted that wall of trees, there would have been no chance of my survival. Instinctively, I pulled my steering wheel to change the direction to avoid the trees, not realizing that on the other side of the road was a 15-foot drop, which was unavoidable. My car flipped 4 times as it plummeted down this drop, finally stopping when colliding with a tree. I was unconscious at the time. I believe that the force of the impact from the airbag knocked me unconscious. It's okay, soul, stop shaking. I woke up to smoke coming from the hood of my car, in extreme shock, not realizing how badly I had been thrown around in the car. My seatbelt did not hold me in place. I quickly pulled my friend from the passenger seat of the car. Once I knew she was safely out of the car unhurt. Oh my God, my whole body is shaking because my soul... All right, relax, it's all good. I quickly pulled my friend from the passenger seat of the car. Once I knew she was safely out of the car, unhurt, I realized quickly that I needed to get help. Bleeding from my head and being totally banged up, I ran and jumped a small river in an attempt to get to the house that I saw closest to the site of the accident. Once getting over the river, I noticed a person running towards me, yelling not to move, that I was bleeding very badly, and that they had called for help. I remember calling my brother at the time. I was apologizing for getting into an accident. I wasn't worried about myself as badly as I was hurt. I was worried about judgment and disappointment of others. This is the day that my immune system stopped functioning. After another life-altering moment. When your body's in a state of trauma, it will automatically shut down unnecessary bodily functions. An attempt to help keep the body alive. An attempt to help the body keep you alive. In this case, my body had been so traumatized by the accident, it shut down my immune system leaving my body incapable of any immune response. During the accident, I suffered. Here. Let me take another sip. All right. So, during the accident, I suffered multiple lacerations to the head. My rear view mirror was stuck in my head. Picking glass out of my skull for weeks after the 38 stitches had been removed was a regular occurrence for me. My whole left side was incapable of moving the way it should. After contacting school to explain the details of my accident, it had been clearly explained to me that I could not have any extra time to prepare for my upcoming final exams, that they would have to be written as scheduled. I knew that I had to find the strength within me to get my finals, to get to my finals in the city. In the 2 weeks following my accident, I couldn't allow anything to stop me. I prepared for my exams in a state of extreme pain, with so much facial and cranial bruising that it hurt me even to think, never mind having to study. The hardest thing was the weight of the nursing books, because it was so difficult to move them around with only my right side now functioning at half of its mobility. This was a very difficult time for me. Well, allergic to painkillers, I knew that I had quite a road to recovery to endure. At this moment in my life, the doctors were unaware of the extent of damage that I would suffer from this life-altering accident. This is how I saw it. After my life, I struggled, and I had gotten to the point that I had self-sacrificed, thinking that it would better my life. I was giving it all to start fresh. I was in such great need of physical therapy and continuous care. Without an income, I deemed it impossible to continue to live in the country without being able to work in my state. I returned to the city with a knapsack to start over. Walking away from all of my personal belongings. Luckily, I had a friend who had an apartment for me to live in returning to the city. Soon after, I found myself deeply involved in heavy chemical drugs to relieve my pain. Resulted in me not being any better off. Woke up to find myself no longer living or thriving to achieve my goals that were seemingly so close within reach. This is how I describe that part of my life. I spent years accumulating all of the finest pieces of china and silver to create a massive, impressive dinner party. Invite the most distinguished in the attempts to win over many. Oh, sorry. I'm going to lose you guys in that, so let me go back. This is how I describe that part of my life. I spent years accumulating all the finest pieces of china and silver to create a massive, impressive dinner party. Invite the most distinguished guests in the attempts to win over the hearts of many. I thought that achieving the goal of becoming a nurse would finally give me the acceptance and love that I was so desperately seeking. Imagine that you have created quite a menu for your guests, and that you have set the finest of tables to seat them. Well, just when they're about to arrive, your tablecloth gets pulled off your table, smashing your settings, leaving nothing but disaster in your presence. Imagine the overwhelming emotions felt as the doorbell's starts ringing, and it's pure disaster inside your house. To top off such an event, well, now the food is burning as well. Yes, my life felt like a total lifelong disaster. Just the beginning of another adventure in a whole new chapter. The doctors were unaware of the extent of damage that my body was suffering with my immune system, no longer properly functioning. I started suffering extreme symptoms of many different magnitudes. The one thing that sticks in my mind the most is that it amplified so much about how my body reacted to things. My asthma worsened. The inflammation levels in my body were crippling. These states would drastically alter within minutes. Just so you have an idea of how drastic my body changes were, I will explain it like this. I would be fine, and then within minutes, parts of my body would swell to the point of loss of mobility. It was very painful. No, it was a very painful time in my life. I had a really hard time coping, as the doctors couldn't explain to me what was happening. They themselves couldn't understand it. My repeated history of depression and drug use led them to assume that I was just consuming bad drugs. In reality, my immune system was no longer functioning properly. Every time my skin would break, not having an immune system response, my body was incapable of triggering the formation of a scab to close my skin. My body's natural flora, Staphylococcus aureus, would continue to eat my skin, resulting in the formation of holes all over my body. Well, and look at that, guys. I guess this is where it ends because my battery on my phone is about to die. I really hope and pray that you guys have enjoyed it up to now. But I will mark the page, charge my phone, and tomorrow night, same time, I will take it up from here if you're interested. I love you all. Change is possible for every one of you. Have a great night. Peace.